Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the Clockwork Game Dev Show. My name is Keith Burgun. I am the host of this show. Today we're going to be reading an article from Robert Yang about tactics games, which is very relevant to what I'm doing right now, obviously with Gem Wizards Tactics. But yeah, so we're going to go through this and see what there is. One of the two games on here we have played, which was Gears Tactics. We played that recently. And the other game on this is a game that I have not played. Also, apparently, Robert has written a lot about Invisible Ink. This looks kind of interesting too. Should check that out. But anyways, what's it called? Yeah. So as also I want to mention, if people have other, related posts they'd like me to read or whatever, go through, let me know, and we can do that. Actually, wait a second. This, yeah. One second. Okay. Okay, yeah. So, so we're going to go through this. Here's another thing from Dadnista. From sinisterdesign.net, 12 ways to improve turn-based RPG combat systems. Okay. So what's interesting is that like the whole, and that's actually, this didn't occur to me until I just sort of like skimmed Robert's article. And it occurred to me that like a big thing is, one second, let me grab this guy. A big difference with my game is that my game is not an RPG. I think we sort of take for granted RPG elements, things like that in a lot of these games. But my game is really not an RPG, which is kind of a weird thing about it. But yeah, we'll go through this afterwards. Let's do this one first. Also, I found this article, which looks kind of cool, about Invisible Ink, which I haven't played in a while. But Advanced Wars types and FFT Fire Emblem types. Yeah, I mean, are there Advanced Wars types, or is it just Advanced Wars and clones of Advanced Wars? I'm trying to think if there's other. I guess maybe like the Rabbids game, like the Mario Rabbids game, might qualify as like an Advanced Wars type. Hey, Dark, how's it going? More traditional war games. Yeah, but I just wonder if people are making those. Because I feel like, I don't know. I feel like this looks very RPG-ish. I'm in a different place today and can actually watch the stream fine. All right, awesome. So this is a game called Horizon's Gate, which I haven't seen. But if people are playing it, I mean, I think that the art in this game, I think I can do better than this. I think my game is going to look better than this game. The colors are a little weird. Yeah. It's just mainly the color is an issue. And just like the style of shading, like there's too many colors, I think, and everything's too detailed. And a few other things. I think I can do better than this one. Also, they have different size pixels around, I think. Like, yeah, definitely. Look at the pixels on this heart and then the pixels on her. So that's something that bugs me. When it's like one thing to have like HD stuff and then, lighting effects or whatever, and then pixels. It's another thing to have two different sizes of pixels. I guess it would be one thing to have like many different sizes. Maybe that's what they have going on here. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think I can make a game that like looks a little better than this. I think. War game is such a weird word. It has to mean so many different things. It has way too many different meanings. Yeah, Voidspire Tactics. Oh man, there's so many. Well, that's good. I want to like their Rad Codex games, but I just can't get into them. All right, so let's read this. I finished playing two 2020 RPG tactics games, Horizon's Gate and Gears Tactics. I clearly want to make a tactics game someday. Anyway, here's my design analysis and thoughts. So I actually did not. I've known Robert for a while, but I had no idea that he was into tactics games until I saw him post about this. Horizon Skate is a retro pixel art game, retro pixel art open world sailing game about exploring towns and dungeons, buying low and selling high, and getting into battles where you push and pull and surround. Interesting. It's very good and you should play it. If you don't have much time, you can probably stop after like 5 hours. So a lot of this RPG stuff is not going to necessarily apply to my game, but we can still talk about it and talk about its general game design qualities. Dadnista says, I want to like their rad Codex games, but I just can't get into them. One interesting thing they do is that it's turn-based, but there's no split between overworld and battle map. Oh, cool. Yeah. Like Temple of Elemental Evil is that way. A lot of those, like, I guess Baldur's Gate is like that. Do you mean actual war simulations like Kriegspiel? Literally translates to war game. This is where the name comes from. Is that true? I thought that maybe that's where that comes from. I don't know when Kriegspiel is from. Tabletop figurine games that got inspired by that, like Warhammer or more like Risk. Are you talking about the thing this article talks about, digital war simulations? Yeah, right. There's all kinds of war games. For sure. So let's see. The RPG arc involves leveling up and constantly swapping job classes to advance across 3 different intertwining skill trees. So to access the late game mage warrior class, you'll have to level up to an intermediate warrior class and an intermediate mage class first, etc. Sounds a little bit like Final Fantasy Tactics. There's 2 novel progression systems for earning money outside of combat. Cartographer NPCs pay you based on how much of the world map you've explored, and researcher NPCs based on how much pay you based on how many different items you've examined. Sorry, I'm having difficulty reading this morning. I think I need more energy drink. I didn't have coffee this morning. That's the other problem. As a hard incentive for exploration, you also have to first unlock character classes by visiting trainers hidden throughout the world. But to explore around the world, you need to stop in towns and buy morale. So there's like this toy-like kind of thing with these kinds of systems that like Final Fantasy Tactics have. And I remember Final Fantasy Tactics Advance had this horrible pattern of actually like narrowing that toy-like thing, so it would only like drop in the items that you needed to unlock new classes at exactly the rate at which you could like master those classes. So like it became actually super linear. It took this thing which should have been super toy-like and playful and made it that like if I were to compare 10 different people's Final Fantasy Tactics Advance save files, they would all be basically the same because there was like really actually only one way to like build your team optimally, really. No More Birds! What's up, No More Birds? How's it going? Just doing some game design stuff. Did my thing post? It did post. Oh, great. Excellent. Cool. All right, we're reading this article from Robert Yang about turn-based tactics games, which is very relevant to what we are working on. As a hard incentive for exploration, this first game seems like a lot more of an RPG that just sort of has a tactical combat system. So I don't know how much of this is actually going to really be relevant to us. And also a lot of this stuff, like, this like RPG designy stuff, I feel like it's hard to come up with like what's good and what's not good to do for those kinds of games, because like anything can kind of be good. Like a lot of things work. Whoa, Pete Potato subscribed with Twitch Prime. I don't even know what that means, but that sounds awesome. Thank you, Pete Potato. I have a feeling that's a good thing. Wow. Welcome, Pete Potato. Almost anything functions in an RPG. Yeah, I mean, there are certain things that do ruin the experience of an RPG, for sure. Like you have to stay within some bounds of balance. Oh, nice. Wow, that's awesome. Whoa. First badge. Dude, I gotta like learn about all this Twitch stuff. Thanks for becoming a subscriber, Pete Potato. Nice bunny emote. Okay, so yeah, I should. I think they only let you make 3 emotes. I want to make more emotes, but I think they only let you make the three. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, within an RPG, like there's parameters that it can be like this much too easy, or it can be like this much too hard. And by hard, I mean you just have to like grind more usually. Um, yeah. So RPGs like, and that's not to say that they're easy to design. There's a lot of design work, but in terms of like building a system and coming up with good, the kinds of sort of design parameters. That's one of the reasons that I am so interested in strategy games is that they're a little bit narrower than toys, for example, and so it's more, you can come up with better, clear criteria for how to do them well. I think there's less that works, and there's more that can be said, I think, about what works or not in strategy games. So yeah, what's interesting is actually going back to what Dark was saying. Dark was saying, oh, Pete Potato says you can make extra emotes for bit donators. Oh, that's cool. I should look into that. But Dark was saying that, like, yeah, the phrase war game has lots of different meanings. And one of the things that, to me, like, I don't really care that much about, like, distinguishing between, like, Risk and, like, other tabletop war games and, like, something like Fantasy General and Advance Wars. Like, to me, those are all they're all kind of similar. They're all kind of doing the same basic thing. Whereas, to me, what is a really good distinguishing factor is RPG tactics or just tactics. So, you know what I mean? Like a tactical war game is one thing, the strategy game, and then the tactical war RPG is, I think, really its own thing. And I for some reason, like, that just hadn't really occurred to me that, like, one of the major things that I'm doing in my game is it's not an RPG. It has like a campaign structure, but that's more like playing a tournament almost. It's almost more like, it's kind of like a splitting of the difference somewhat in some ways. But yeah, anyway, let's keep going. Usually because in a tactics RPG, you can lean on the RPG grindy stuff to invalidate the tactics games if you want to. Yeah. So whenever you have like a 2-screen thing like that, there's always one of the screens dominates. And the other one becomes just sort of crushed under the weight of the other thing. I would say XCOM is a tactics RPG. Yeah, and that's because of the progression. There's like a ton of progression. That's really the major thing, is like how much progression can you do? How much like configuring and choosing of what you're going to have is there? How long is the campaign? That's the other reason that these games like XCOM, how long is a campaign of XCOM? Like 20 hours or something? It's like ridiculous. And this is another reason that, to me, it's so important to distinguish between strategy game and, like, toy or RPG. Is because you have things like Civ, which is clearly should probably be thought of as a strategy game, yet the matches are 10 hours long. And I think that the mix-up between RPG and strategy game is related to that. So, like, XCOM, yeah, so anyways. Let's see. Yeah, so some of this specific stuff, like, I don't know that we necessarily need to read a lot of this stuff. There's a big potential for cheesing via items. I mean, yeah, that's not a JRPG tradition. That's a JRPG, like, necessary, like a resulting, truth of, like, the logical conclusion of JRPG is that there will be cheesing via items. In fact, maybe it's even the goal of JRPGs. That's kind of what you're trying to do, is you're trying to explore the limits of this, like, toy system. And I honestly, if it's a good toy, it will let you do things that are imbalanced and, like, screwed up and sort of break the game. And like I said, like, a bad toy is something like Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. I actually specifically played Tactics Advance 2 for the DS a lot. And to me, that's a good example of, there isn't really a lot of cheesing so much. They, like, restricted it, and now it's just a bad toy and a bad strategy game. Into the Breach or Invisible Ink, some progression systems, but not nearly as much as XCOM. Yeah, I think Invisible Ink certainly was more... I can't speak to Into the Breach as well, but Invisible Ink felt more like... more, like less of a big RPG sort of thing. Um, there was a JRPG called Cosmic Star Heroine that had cooldowns on items, so you couldn't do this sort of cheesing with items. I don't know if cooldowns would necessarily always fix that, but it depends on how the cooldowns are implemented, I guess. Invisible Ink was sort of more horizontal progression stuff, not so much grind to overpower things. Right. The most interesting enemies were split worms that split to two clones upon being damaged, which encouraged you to hit them really hard once and then use a weak AoE attack with widespread. Okay, sure. There's fun interactions between the open world layer and the battle layer. Like if you run out of food and your fleet has low morale, then you will begin any battle with demoralized status effects that weaken everyone. Okay. It's funny that like interactions between the open world layer and the battle layer, like that they stand out as, you know, like it should be one holistic system, really, theoretically. But yeah, like it's definitely not. And so you have like, oh wow, look, a thing I did in game one actually affected game two. Yeah. Lots of skills about pushing and pulling positions, borrowing from Into the Breach. We all know what it's really borrowing from. Or what where Into the Breach got those ideas. So you might pull your warrior out of the way of friendly fire and then cast a big AoE spell on the mob, or you might push an enemy into the other enemy, which lines them all up for a charging attack, etc. By the way, I'm just kidding. I don't think Into the Breach. I don't know if Into the Breach actually got anything from Oro. I seem to remember there was some stuff that like seemed Oro-ish, but hard to know. There's a tactician skill class that's a huge missed opportunity with skills that represent. Anyway, yeah, obviously I am a fan of pushing and pulling using the grid rather than spreadsheet interactions, right? That's something that we talk about a lot. That's good because it creates a fertile soil for emergent complexity and what was the other thing, like structural changes and other games from the Horizons Gate person has all this movement stuff and predates Into the Breach. Cool. Add pushing and pulling to every game. Exactly. If you haven't played Into the Breach, you should. I played it briefly. I didn't dive in, and it was a while ago, so I sort of forget. I forgot exactly about like how much the metagame affected things. To be honest, like I actually really did not enjoy Into the Breach. I like the gameplay was too. The way I remember Into the Breach was the monsters would spawn and then you had like a little puzzle to solve, basically, because there's only hidden information at those points when those monsters would spawn in, and then beyond that it was completely deterministic. And so it was a small grid. So I was just like, this just feels like I'm doing puzzles every few turns, which I think is distinct from, a little bit distinct from certain kinds of tactics games where it's a little bit more, what's it called? Play it on stream. The metagame is very light. I could play it on stream, I guess. It's not a bad idea. There's a tactician skill class, missed opportunity, which skills that reposition others but don't apply any damage directly. That sounds good to me. I wish I could have used this to manipulate turn timers more directly, but I imagine it was probably too powerful. What's the huge missed opportunity? I don't know. Maybe I need to know more about the game to understand that. Late game chains are about stun locking dangerous enemies into place. Like there's 5 different enemy types of disabling status effects to keep them out of melee range and force them to get delayed AoE spell channeling. Most AoE spells take 15 plus ticks to cast. What's a tick? Is that a turn? Just long enough for most enemies to start their turn and possibly move away. Oh, weird. So there's like some kind of like tick system there's like a real time, kind of like what Dungeon Crawl has. Maybe I skipped something that said that. I don't think it mentioned that. Wait, each unit gets 1 move action, 1 attack, skill action. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how ticks work. FFT-ish initiative system. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Into the Breach guys were struck with some Oro-level epiphany about games, but didn't develop it for 6 years, and the final product ends up being a bit flat as a result. Battle design section. Well, I don't see anything about ticks in here. But, yeah. Yeah, I remember the two things that I remember about Into the Breach that made me be like, I don't really want to dive into it were one, the puzzle-like small grid, and two, the what's it called? The metagame felt rather heavy and actually really important. So I would say Into the Breach is, from what I remember, if I'm remembering right, Into the Breach feels to me more like an RPG because the combat system is more, it's almost more like just like a, yeah, I don't know. It felt more like an RPG for me, but I might be wrong. The AI in Into the Breach is merely AI. The enemy mostly chooses what to attack randomly. Right, yeah. And that ends up mattering a lot, from what I remember. And they do show you what the enemy's going to attack, which is cool, but that also means that, like, it really is just, once they spawn in, it's just, it's a puzzle from there, pretty much. And I also think there's not enough room. From what I remember, there was just, like, not enough space to do stuff in, really. It's too constricted. Okay, so what are the design lessons from this game? Big parties make a crowd. In games with dozens of recruitable characters, you can't treat them all the same. You'll want a lot of granular detail and options for your main party, but very coarse options for your secondary party because you don't actually care about them. I don't know what this main secondary party throw thing is. I guess that's like an XCOM where you have like, you know, your well, in the old XCOMs, not in the new ones so much, but in the old XCOMs you would have a lot of like troops that were like their job was to die pretty much, cannon fodder type of people. This is where a lot of games let you send these crew on idle game style missions. Oh, idle game style missions? Yuck. Or XCOM will let you assign them to background tasks outside of missions. I think the compromise would be a system where these NPCs keep busy. See, like, this kind of stuff is just, like, total RPG, you know, like when we were talking about objectives last time and how you can just, like, slap objectives or quests into, like, literally any system and it just works because it's totally decoupled from anything. And so, yeah, that's... XCOM would let you assign them to background tasks outside of missions. I think the compromise would be a system where the NPCs keep busy in the background, and then when there's an open slot in your main party, you can promote them to official PC player character status. Oh, that would be like that's his idea. That sounds neat. I like it. But yeah, a lot of this is not super like useful to us, but it might be just fun to read anyway. Secondary just means your B team. Okay. Why do you need a B team at all? I guess because like people get injured or something, like they have like a, that would be something I would have sometimes in, especially in the old XCOM games, is I'd have like some people get injured. Okay, cool. I like a bit of metagame in tactics games that adds some longer arcs. As long as the metagame is easy to understand and connects in a good way to the tactics game, I like it. Tactics metagame is good when it changes your strategy inside the tactics part, like prioritizing different metagame resources. I'm not sure I followed that last bit. Prioritizing different metagame resources. Yeah, I mean, the problem is that the metagames end up being these pretty solvable strategy games of their own, and then you just do that really well, and then the tactics game is really easy. Or vice versa, the tactics game, it's all about the tactics game and the metagame doesn't matter, which actually is a lot less common. Usually metagames, I wrote about this in my article about, oh yeah, I use the term metagame for this. But I don't know, the RPG progression system or whatever you want to call it. Because like if in the battle you could get fuel or lumber, neither helps you in the battle at hand, but either might be good for some upgrade later. I see. I don't think that's the case in either Invisible Ink nor Into the Breach. Invisible Ink, I seem to remember being the metagame being pretty thin. But I can't speak to, like I said, I can't speak to Invisible Ink. But I can speak to, let's see, what's a good example of a game that's like this? Actually, Final Fantasy Tactics, from what I remember, doesn't, even though it's an RPG, it didn't have a lot of, maybe I'm misremembering, I think. It's been a while since I played the original Final Fantasy Tactics. But the basic concept here is you have like system A, and it can be sort of optimized. And if you do optimize it, then it sort of ruins system B, because system B works best at one difficulty setting. Like there's some difficulty setting at which system B is going to work the best, right? We can just that's some number we could quantify it as, or something like some rank, right? And if you don't optimize system A, then system B might like actually kind of suck and be imbalanced. And if you do optimize it, it also could suck in the other way. So like you have to like sort of optimize it, not optimize too much in system A to make sure that system B doesn't get ruined. That's like the concept basically. Team no metagame. Okay. A super light basic example would be choosing how to allocate experience in something like Fire Emblem. Yeah, is that ever interesting? Like, is that ever satisfying, interesting, or good at all? When you have to like, do you want more attack damage or defense points? I feel like that's always either totally solved and obvious or totally arbitrary. And that's something that I observed that back in the day, like before in 100 Rogues, like times. That's why in 100 Rogues you can't even pick like, I think, or at some point we had, I'm trying to remember the story of it, but like at one point we had like you could go strength up or, dex up or something like that. And then we changed it so that you had a bunch of skills to pick from, or you could pick like one stat that you could boost up, like strength up or something, which was already like a pulling away from the idea that you can just like arbitrarily increase your stats like, do you want more dexterity or do you want more strength? That whole thing. Which characters you like get the killing blow? That's also, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I'm definitely not trying to say all these games can be fun, and all these games can be good RPGs in the way that RPGs are good. And I would say all these games most of them are mostly fun and are good RPGs. Yeah. Let's see. Directional. Oh, here's some stuff. Let's see. Let's go through these. Per unit turn timers break chains in an unsatisfying way. Every unit has its own individual turn timer, and I don't think it's worth it unless you let players cheese and manipulate it a lot. It's not fun for your game to say, sorry, you can't do that. This thing will be too late by 1 second. Horizon ends up holding back on time manipulation to balance the game, which is a shame. It's possible to make very fast character, a very slow character. Everyone's always I see. So there's like speeds. So it's sort of like doing like a dungeon crawl style. Things take a certain amount of time to perform type of thing. Gotcha. Dad needs to explain the FFT system. The fact you can balance between safely taking kills but get a worse experience allocation versus get experience on the car you want but playing more risky is at least a taste of something interesting. In my experience, that stuff has not ever been really a significant choice. It's always been pretty much like it kind of doesn't matter. If it feels like it's a choice, it's because it doesn't really matter. And if it is a real choice, then it's usually obvious. And it's because these systems they're not balanced, and they're not designed to be balanced. They're toys, They're designed to be a field of things to play with. And every once in a while, you get something that's like kind of like a strategic decision. But even then, it's very rare that it's actually a hard choice, or that it's actually, not just a solvey kind of obvious choice. Same sort of thing like with Slay the Spire, delaying finishing a fight to draw a card like Feed or Ritual Dagger to get your permanent boosts. I'm trying to think of examples like that. Yeah, a lot of the times those kind of choices are like, do you want fire magic or ice magic? Or do you want attack up or defense up? That kind of thing. And it's usually obvious which one you want. Horizon ends up holding back on. Okay, we already read this stuff. Yeah, I prefer the simplicity and flexibility of XCOM. Yeah, I think that it's good to. So the problem with like having like time in this way that's separate from. So turn-based games take time and they put it into a discrete form, and well, let's talk about space. So, like, you know, you have continuous space. So, like, League of Legends or something, most real time games have continuous space, meaning you can, like, move to any spot pretty much. You know, if you get down to it, they may still have some kind of grid. Like, I think StarCraft sort of has a grid, but it basically functions as continuous space. No one's thinking about the spaces as discrete in StarCraft. So when you have continuous space, it makes sense to have continuous time as well, because then you can the two things like interrelate with each other in a clear way. Whereas when you have, I generally object to the idea of mixing continuous time with discrete space, or discrete space, or I'm doing this backwards, or discrete time with continuous space. Because you want those things to have a relationship with each other that's like obvious and clear and intuitive, and it always becomes unclear whenever you mix the two. And I would say that this, where you have the discrete time in terms of turns, but then you have a smaller discrete unit that's not necessarily like aligned with turns, which is like seconds or ticks or whatever. I think that's a bad idea. I think that you want to keep your time and your turns as clearly matching each other and aligned as possible, because this is like a fundamental, you know, mechanical way that your system is working. So no chips challenge. Probably no chips challenge. Yeah, sorry. Chips challenge is canceled. Directional facing systems aren't worth it. Like Final Fantasy Tactics, every unit also has. Hey, John Blow also has exactly that problem in his game design. He's making a tile-based game with smooth movement, and you don't know where enemies stand as a result. Oh, that's sad. Directional facing systems aren't worth it. I agree. Like Final Fantasy Tactics, every unit also has a post-turn phase where they choose which direction to face. Blech. This isn't worth it and just slows down play for a fiddly thing that doesn't really matter except for very specific. Yeah, no, let's just delete that. Absolutely. Avoid implementing too many status effects. I guess we could talk more about this and like why this is not worth doing. But yeah, it's just this like simulation-y, like D&D-ish kind of thing. I should watch the John Blow stream at some point. I've never watched that before, and he doesn't have me banned on Twitch yet, so I could do that. I feel like a voyeur. I think it's more, if it's worth doing, you need to do more with it besides have a backstab ability. Yes, yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say. I wouldn't say that they're just not worth it across the board. It really depends on the system, but in most cases, probably it's not worth it. I would say it should be, because it is kind of like a fundamental rule, like systemic rule, so it's really got to be tied in with everything. Yeah, or else it's just really not worth it. Avoid implementing too many status effects. And by the way, the fact that it has this and this, like I'm just like, when I first saw this, I was like, oh, maybe I should play this. Now I'm like, no, I'm not gonna play this, because like putting in the facing thing, that just seems like such a like, this was in Final Fantasy Tactics, therefore I'm going to put this into my game kind of decision. I could see facing being worth it, where facing is the central thing. Exactly. And actually, a game that I could think of that kind of has that is Neuroshima Hex. That's a good example of something where like it's all about facing. Invisible Ink only have directional facing for enemies, not for your units. Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense because of the line of sight thing. Avoid implementing too many status effects is the problem with a lot of RPGs, but I felt it here. I never figured out what the itchy status did. I could see the rationale here. You want to make each skill and each spell feel unique, so you give them some unique status ailments. In practice, I just felt kept using the generic ones like poison and stun. Right. Yeah. I mean, this is a problem. I mean, the problem with status effects not all status effects, but many status effects is that they exist too much in the spreadsheet world. They don't actually change the grid. Really, it comes down to like, what is. I think that's what you should always ask when you're designing abilities or anything like that. Like, how does this change what the grid means, what the space means? And status effects usually, like a lot of times, don't do that, or you should make sure that they do, I guess. Multiwinia is a continuous time RTS with unit facing. Ugh, God, that sounds horrible. Well, so is that a problem with the rules being unclear? The best status effect of your enemy is dead. Right, exactly. Absolutely. Chemical versus physical, I really like that terminology. What was that from? If you're going to include a mechanic, give it consistent attention or leave it out. Right. Well, this goes to clockwork game design, right? Which is because basically you should have a core mechanism, and only things that you should have in that game are supporting mechanisms, right? So that's what giving it consistent. It's not about giving it consistent attention. Like it's not good enough that it's just always like on screen or like available as a button to be clicked. It has to be actually supporting the core mechanism going towards the goal, right? So the core mechanism is facing the goal, and then under that you have all of the supporting mechanisms which are feeding into that core mechanism. And then anything that's not in that little grid there should just be deleted. It just shouldn't be in the game. This is the developer's third game with the same engine framework, so there's lots of system left over from previous games that doesn't make sense. Ugh. Like there's all this environmental manipulation stuff, setting areas on fire, making them wet, but then the game barely uses it, and the effect on the battle is often negligible. It's a bit confusing for players because we don't know if this mechanic will be a big deal or not. I want to look up how well this game did, because like if this game, it sounds like this game is kind of not that awesome. Let's just look real quick on how many reviews it has. 162 reviews. What was the rule for like? There was like some percentage. There's not, actually, this didn't do that well. It seems to me, but honestly, if my game does this well, I'll be very happy with that. Let's see what else. This is the developer's third. Yeah. We already read this. Leftover game design. Right, Divinity Original Sin actually uses that kind of stuff pretty well throughout the entire game. Let's catch up on chat, and then we'll go into the Gears Tactics section, which we did play. If you missed it, it is still probably up on my Twitch stream past videos. Digital CCGs have figured out how to make UI for a game with tons of keywords. Yeah. Other games need to copy that. I agree. Totally. In StarCraft, there is no facing, and there is very little benefit from surrounding the enemy apart from the slight advantage of a concave formation versus convex. Right. Are your clockwork game design philosophy inspired by the epistemology of David Deutsch? Seemed very similar to his hard-to-vary criterion. I found out about David Deutsch after I wrote my books, I think. And I got like momentarily extremely obsessed with him because there are certain things about his theory that I like a lot. But no, it was not inspired by that. In fact, if anything, it was more inspired by just music theory. Various things that I read in when I went to school for music theory, composition. Dungeons of Dreadmore roguelike had tons of weird damage types and status effects as a joke. Nice. I think the rule is 70x reviews equals sales. Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, that'd be great. I would be super happy to have a game that sold like that. So we'll see how that goes. All right, Gears Tactics. We played this recently. I already kind of forgot what the hell it was like. Trying to remind myself here. It was basically like, I remember thinking like, okay, this is like XCOM 2012 3. That's what this sort of felt like to me. And then some people said in the chat some really horrible things about its metagame or something. I forget what it was, but there was like, some people came into the chat. I think it was Bowles came into the chat and was saying like all this horrible stuff about it. And maybe Stephen Hutton as well. And I was just like, oh, okay, good. I can like stop playing this now. But I should probably play this a little bit more. because I haven't been playing since XCOM 2012. I beat XCOM 2012, but then since then, like I was never happy with it, and it really just turned me off from playing the rest of them, like all the games that were basically inspired by that one. Gears Tactics is a fancy XCOM 2012 style 3D tactics game about scooting into cover, managing sightlines, and doing actions in the best order. I like playing it a lot, but if you don't have much time, you can probably stop playing at the 33% mark after the first boss fight, which is the best part of the game anyway. I like this. This is a great... when can you probably stop playing? Oh, okay. When can you probably stop playing? That's a good thing that I think reviewers should generally should do. Let's see. All right, progression played on normal difficulty, like a normal person. Progression is Gears Tactics' biggest departure from XCOM. There's no overall strategic layer or metagame here. It's just a menu where you click on a button to begin the next mission. You can interpret this as a statement about the purity of tactics without strategy nonsense. So this makes it sound like it's more like a strategy game and less like an RPG. But there's this weird vestigial mechanic where your squad members can die and you have to replace them, but it doesn't work without the rest of the fantasy of being a scrappy army. And unlike XCOM, new recruits often start at a higher XP level than your existing troops, which feels even more awkward. What's it called? As many reviews mention, this game often requires you to use hero units, and their deaths make you restart the mission, which again breaks the idea that you bond with your squad more in their loss. What's it called? No more birds. If I'm ever told when you can stop playing, it's not like after beating it or whatever, I just don't think I would buy that game. That's valid. Yeah, so this whole thing of this is something that, like, the Fire Emblem games have always had this problem too. Where, hold on, I think I read this earlier, and I remember there being an issue here with, as many reviews mentioned, this game often requires you to use hero units, and their deaths make you restart the mission, which again breaks the idea that you bond with your squad and mourn their loss. Yeah, for sure. As for the final mission in the game, you're not even allowed to bring any of your personalized units. So one of the problems with Fire Emblem that it has historically always had, not as much with the latest one, but Fire Emblem has always had this problem of it has permadeath on units, which is kind of strange, but it also has reloading. So what that means is what that effectively means is, you reload when you lose a unit, usually. Because if you let your campaign just lose units, you're at some point going to just not have the resources to go on. You're going to just literally get stuck. So you have to pretty much reload. I mean, you could make like a choice about like, oh, I guess I'll not reload, like strategically not reloading sometimes. But generally speaking, you have to reload if you lose a unit, which means that it doesn't have permadeath. So that's a weird thing that sort of sounds similar and familiar to this. Fire Emblem does balance in such a way that you can win with just the invincible units. But yeah, just being able to reload is very silly. Well, I don't know. I mean, being able to reload, when I was playing Master of Magic recently, and like, I think that save scumming makes sense in a toy. I think that actually, like, literally just having undos and save stating, as much as you want, seems totally fine to me in the context of a toy. And I think that, in fact, it's a good thing. I think we should have that in toys. It's just weird that the difficulty control is so careless, says Brick Road. Hi, Brick Road, by the way. In the newer Fire Emblems, you can choose non-permadeath mode. Yes, which I did do, and then that has its own slew of problems. Like you can't balance a game around. I mean, first of all, none of these games are balanced, but you really can't balance around. It'll have permadeath, but also you can turn the permadeath off. And that's one of the problems. Like either it's going to be balanced around, like, oh, you're losing these units permanently at certain points, or not. I played a FOS recently. It had a health bar, but it also had reloading. What's FOS? I don't know what that. Oh, FPS. Had a health bar and reloading. Yeah. I mean, and if it's sufficiently toy-like and it has like good toy values, then like who cares, you know? Like there's no problem. I used to be 10, 15 years ago, I would make I would make the mistake of sort of confusing like toys and strategy games. I'd be like, these games shouldn't let you reload. That ruins everything. But no, actually they should let you reload. Like that's letting you embrace the system for what it is. And the fact that some players play and they're like, oh, is it cheating to reload? Like, am I actually cheating myself of this experience to reload that I've lost a unit? Like maybe I'm supposed to lose units, you know, like maybe that's part of the game and they don't know, you know, and you know, it's possible again in like Final Fantasy Tactics, it is possible if you lose enough units, or you know, the old XCOM, it's another one, the XCOM 95. If you lose enough units, like you could just be screwed. And again, these campaigns are very long, so if there's a permanent death mode, though, you shouldn't let people reload, because that's the idea. If you want to reload, then don't pick that mode. Yeah, okay, sure, I agree. Yeah, it's fine to make a permanent death mode, and that's what's cool about toys, is that you can have all kinds of modes. You could have a mode where, that's what roguelikes, they call it, I always forget this name. Starts with a C. Somebody just reminded me of it the other day. But, like contracts or something like that. Anyway, if you want to do permadeath, then it should be Iron Man. What's the difference between Iron Man and permadeath? I thought that's what Iron Man was. Obviously, they had to do this so they could add some Gears of War narratives, cutscenes, and storytelling, which they did not have to do. That's just the worst in that game. Oh my god. Holy shit. But this is a good example of like, yeah, it sounded like somebody had an idea for Gears Tactics that it would be a little bit more like kind of what I'm going for with Gem Wizards Tactics, like this. It's all about the strategy game, you know, but then also there's this narrative crap that has to, you know, so now you have to have hero units who can't die and et cetera, et cetera. The converse is perhaps a weakness of XCOM too, because anyone can die. And you know what's another big problem here? A big problem here, and in all of these tactics games, every single player tactics game I've ever played, with the possible exception of XCOM 95 asterisk, they don't have loss. You don't lose battles. Every single battle you win. And what I mean by that is if you do somehow like lose the battle, it usually prompts you to reload or something, or like it gives you like the campaign over screen, and then you have to like reload basically and just do it again until you win, right? That's how they all work. And to me, the idea of, well, if it's going to be like this strategy gamey kind of thing, maybe we should have players losing missions sometimes. I don't know. That's crazy, but you know, like you can build loss into the system as something that is a part of the game. And loss of missions, I mean, specifically, and loss of the campaign. That's something that I think that's part of what the rub is here, I think, is that these are missions that you can only win. And they're trying to add something, some kind of like cost or something on winning not good enough. And that's where a lot of this, fundamentally, a lot of this issue is coming from. So my takeaway is, if you're making a single player tactical, war game that's like a strategy game, not an RPG. Of course, RPGs, there's no need to have winning and losing. You can do whatever. But if it's not an RPG, have winning and losing. I beg you. And I'm doing this in Gem Wizards Tactics in one way. There's a lot of different ways that you could approach it. But yeah. In Invisible Ink, you can lose for real. Okay, that's cool. I mean, it's also... Well, what do you mean you can lose for real? Because you can lose for real in XCOM 2012 and probably in Gears of War, in that like you get the game over screen. But that just means you reload and you do that mission that you were just doing again and again and again until you get it. That's not what I mean by losing. By losing, I mean, okay, like I'm going to play 10 missions and about half of them I'm going to lose and keep going forward after a loss. And I put an asterisk on XCOM 1995 because I specifically remember losing some battles in that game and continuing forward. Specifically on the case of like, or like, you know, also XCOM 95 is weird because there isn't like winning and losing so much, but like this is what I would advocate for like RPG design stuff is to get away from winning and losing, you know, success and failure, and make it more like, one of my favorite things in XCOM 95 was the terror missions, because the terror missions were just, there was you weren't gonna like do a perfect job. It was like how much damage can you mitigate, you know, like so aliens attack a city and there's all these people walking around and the aliens are going after the people and they're gonna kill most of them, and sometimes those would go horribly wrong. You would lose like most of your squad and most of the civilians, but like it's still better that you went there and you did it than that you just didn't show up for the terror mission at all, which also is an option. So like, yeah, that kind of stuff is really cool for those like, you know, kind of simulation-y narrative generation toy RPG kind of things. I think that we should go that way with that kind of stuff, and with strategy things, lean into winning and losing. And it's okay to have losing, you know, like you can lose and continue forward. Okay, anyways, continuing forward. For the final mission in the game, you're not even allowed to bring any of your personalized units. Ugh, that's crappy. Because the thing is, too, with the personalized units, in terms of like the toy-like value type stuff and the narrative, you know, building stuff, is that you're building meaning into these units that you've been making this whole game. And so you want to let people use those things and lose those things sometimes. Obviously, they had to do this so they could add some Gears of War narrative cutscenes, which is just the worst. I wish that the converse is perhaps a weakness of XCOM 2 because anyone can die. The authored story has to focus on factions and boss figures. Why does there have to be an authored story? Like, can't the story just be... I mean, XCOM 1995 got it right on this one. The story is an opening cutscene where aliens are attacking, and then there's not a single cutscene for the rest of the game. There's just, you know, like little like text. Like, so when you would like research alien like topics, there would be just like a text thing that you could read if you want to, and things would like unfold, but there would be no like story in this sense. I really think that doesn't help this kind of a system, I think. I mean, XCOM has a story. It's just that it's not like you know, characters like damn, goddamn, shit, goddamn, like all these Gears of War's people. You're probably gonna have to work very hard against player expectations with lose and continue forward in Jet Wizard's tactics. Most legacy games I see still give you choices when you lose. Yeah, this is gonna be one of the things that people will be like weird about for sure. But what are you gonna do? You got to do good things. And I also think that, like, I have a belief that if you have good production values and if the game is generally fun, you can get away with weird shit. I think that players... I used to be more scared that players would be like, no, this is not the way the game's supposed to be. See? You know, but I think that that's... I'm not as worried about that. I think it's more like, you know, people are willing to accept pretty weird shit as long as you do a good job. That's how I sort of feel now. It's weird because I sort of feel like the benefits of losing should be better than winning for difficulty reasons, but you don't want people to lose on purpose. Hard design problem. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that. The benefits of losing should be better. I mean, in Gem Wizard's Tactics, when you lose, it's going to usually mean you lose some units. It's going to mean you lose some like land or territory that, you know, which is the actual goal of the whole campaign. It's going to mean you don't win units that you know selected to as the reward. So it's pretty harsh losing. There won't be a reloading and like do it over again feature. The only upside is that the next mission is easier a little bit. So I don't expect players to be losing on purpose because of that, because it's a pretty big cost. I think you'll be trying to win. But there will be times where you're like, okay, this mission's going bad. I should surrender now before I lose more units. You know what I mean? My issue is that it balances the game opposite of what you would want. I don't want. Oh, I hate the opposite of what I want. Shit. Oh, well, okay. Well, I'll have to keep that in mind. Because I definitely want... What's the opposite of the word the opposite? Whatever's the opposite of the word the opposite, I want that of what I want. Personally, I prefer the opposite of what I want. With respect to the talented devs at Splash Damage, this gamble to strengthen story obviously wasn't worth it. No one plays Gears of War for its trauma or its cutscenes. It'll just be flat characters doing nonsense things for nonsense reasons. This is not harsh enough. This franchise should have been pivoted into stupidity like Doom 2016. Oh yeah, absolutely. In between missions, you assign equipment and level up troops. The equipment design is very unsatisfying for the first 75% of the game. It's just about stacking these fiddly little bonuses. That's right. Yeah, someone, I think it was maybe Ryan Bowles who told us about this. 5% health, 5% accuracy. Ugh. By late game, you get equipment that actually feels meaningful with big chunky bonuses. Yeah, but that's still boring. It's still just numbers. That's assuming you stick with it for that long. In the last third, let me make this a little bigger for you guys. I should have done that earlier. Last third of the game, I just stopped managing equipment because it just took too long. Yeah, and probably because you were too powerful already anyway. That's the worst. This UI stuff. Oh, there you are. Hey, Ryan. How's it going? Yeah, we were just talking about that. So if the player gets an easier next mission, then the game is easier for them. And bad players get a harder game. I don't understand that. If the better player gets an easier next mission, they wouldn't get an easier next mission. The better player, I don't know, I don't follow that. I would like to hear more about that, EY Priest, though. This UI stuff was my largest complaint, yeah. Which is funny because earlier on, Robert is saying that it's sort of there's not much where you just click a button to begin the next mission. But we're just talking about how losing makes the game harder if you lose units. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so actually I've been thinking a lot about the losing units thing, and I'm not exactly sure where I stand on it yet. So there needs to be some kind of unit economies thing in Gem Wizard's Tactics because you're gaining units when you win a mission. So it kind of makes some sense that you're losing some units, but I also feel like it shouldn't be like every unit that died in the mission you lose forever. So I'm going to be looking at that because I agree that could be a real problem, what you're talking about there. Losing the game makes the game harder if you lose units. That's definitely something I got to keep an eye on. If winning gives you a reward, the next mission will be easier. Not necessarily, because you can counter that with other things. So for example, let's say the mission gives you a reward, which is 2 new units, but the next mission's like twice as hard. You know what I mean? Like you can make it happen. I'm just telling you what the goals are. A lot of this stuff is not implemented yet. Since better units means easier mission, there aren't really better units so much in Gem Wizards. Maybe you could have some sort of medic support team that can revive some units. Yeah, some units I think won't die that died in the mission, but I'm not sure how that'll work exactly. And it can be different for different factions. Undead could be really good at revives. If you lose, the next mission won't be twice as hard. If you lose, the next mission will be easier. So the basic concept in Gem Wizard's Tactics is you have 10 missions. You start at 50% territory. The objective is to end with more than 50% territory. And when you win missions, you gain territory. When you lose missions, you lose territory. The game will be balanced such that for any player at their given elo, you should be winning and losing about half of your missions. Like, I'm going to iterate on it until that is the case, that players are losing about half their missions and winning about half their missions. When you lose a mission, so like what will probably happen, it'll be a lot of like win loss, win loss loss, win loss win, that kind of thing. That's like the goal. So when you win a mission, the next mission is a lot harder, because like, and we can explain it as like, oh, you're like deep in enemy territory now or something, like you've pushed in and now it's like really hard. And then when you lose a mission, you're like pushed back sort of. So maybe I can have some kind of visualization for that. That might be kind of cool. Lose next mission easier is a good idea. Yep, that's been the plan. It's fine to have some snowball if it's short enough campaign length. Yeah, the campaign is 10 missions. It's just part of the risk reward valuation. Lose next mission's easier is a good idea. I think no reason to lose on purpose because you get no territory, right? You lose territory, but no hopelessness when you lose. Right? No. Definitely not hopelessness. Like the idea should be that it should be like, look at the whole 10 missions as like a strategy game structure kind of, and that like, there shouldn't be any point where you're like, okay, I just cannot win here, like I'm totally screwed, because you always have opportunities to get new units. The units don't get super strong, like there's levels on the units, but they level up after each mission, but it's not very significant. It's subtle, and you can do a lot with. It's really about the tactics. It's like really just about do the tactics stuff well, and you'll be good. Add a meta story about how the faction leadership are currently working on peace talks, and they'll be done after 10 battles, and the better you do, the better positions. Oh, that's a cool idea. I like that. Your faction is at the negotiation table. That's cool. Maybe I will write that down actually real quick. Yeah, I'm going to write that down. And we'll put that in notes. Peace talks are coming. Gain as much or... Well, the problem with that narrative, though, is that it sort of feels like you want more, you want as much as possible, but that's not the goal. The goal is literally... Now, one thing I'm not sure of is, should the goal be that you need 51% or just 50%? Like that you just haven't lost any, that might be good enough. So, I don't know, maybe actually the peace talks might lead people to be... Because I don't want people to think like, oh, I need to get like 70, 80, 90, percent. It's just, you just have to not lose percentage, basically. I'm not sure whether it has to be 50% or 51%. I'm kind of thinking I have been thinking 51%, that you need to like have gained territory. As long as you gain territory, you win. Yeah. And also, because it's kind of like a tournament structure thing, it's not really the strategy game structure. Like, it would be okay with me if like people are like, oh, I won with like 80% or whatever, like that's fine as like a little high score-y kind of thing. I think that's fine. But the binary goal is to get 51%, I think. Yeah. All right, back to the thing here. In between missions, you assign equipment and level up troops. The equipment design is very unsatisfying for the first 75% of the game. It's just about stacking all these fiddly little bonuses. Oh yeah, we already read that. Skill tree design is a mixed bag with highs and lows. These issues collide with each other. Narrative designers make you stay with just one set of units, while the game designers want you to have an A team, B team, C team that all explore different parts of the skill tree. Boss 1 is hard with an unclear movement range and devastating melee gun attack. Boss 2 is easier because it's stationary and relies on delayed attacks. Probably should have been slotted as Boss 1. Boss 3 is the easiest because by then you've internalized the rules about how bosses work, but that's okay. Final bosses can exist to validate your mastery instead of providing a challenge. In an RPG, I feel like, yeah. Which this is 33% mark. Like, it's the structure for this is all wrong. Like, it sounds to me, it's like it's stuck in this like long, like single player RPG-ish kind of thing. It's like you might as well just go full RPG and make it like, base building or whatever. Let's see. The best part of this game is the frag grenades, which are super OP, but I'm okay with it. Oh wait, we missed some stuff. Battle design. Missed a lot of stuff. Each unit gets 3 action points. There's also no grid, kind of. In practice, there's a loose stochastic grid. We snap to cover objects. Yeah, I don't love that. There's just no advantage to doing this, I don't think. Especially because the game's so simple, you know? Cover can be half cover or full cover like an XCOM. Boring. I hate cover. It's like stupid. The cover hit math is one of this game's best refinements, and is much clearer and feels more fair than an XCOM. Divides hit percent into subcategories like range obstruction and target evasion bonus. Okay, cool. That said, this game's big subtle innovation in level design is that sometimes staying in cover is actually bad. You only need to be in cover if there's enemies nearby, otherwise you're forcing yourself to go too slow. How is this accomplished? I forget. Because this has been a problem in a lot of these kinds of like long crawling missions, you know. 51% whatever, then you've won the war. Yeah. But you can still do better, and that's fine. That's like bragging rights kind of or something. Depends on the faction. Business demons want at least 51 growth. Potatoes want at least 50 defending their land. Yeah, I would prefer consistency. I think that Marcus was probably joking. There are basically 4 types of missions. Kill everything, protect 2 control points. And a lot of stuff like charging and executing enemies at close range to get more actions. Right, maybe, okay. Yeah. I could see that. I played mid-game mission where I could bring only 2 squad members, but they had to somehow fight off 6 fast melee enemies, 4 kamikaze crawling snipers, 4 snipers, blah, blah, blah. I felt massively outnumbered, but the level design balanced this by making them all approach pretty slowly and from the front, which made it easier to stay in cover and slowly manage them. Leftover actions go into additional Overwatch triggers. Overwatch is also triggered by any damage-dealing action, not just movement for XCOM veterans. This will feel wrong at first, but now I think I like this better. Sure, that makes sense. You can also set the Overwatch cone to be shorter than the effective weapon range, which gives you detailed control over how your squads overlapping Overwatch cones will trigger. That is nice, I guess. You could probably make an entire tactics puzzle game based on this implementation of Overwatch. This is also the game's greatest achievement in sound design. The Overwatch trigger sounds like a gun click mixed with a slot machine. It's a drug. That's not good. That's bad. The best part of this game is the frag grenades. They're OP. Grenades can't miss. Go farther than most guns, over walls and bounce off walls. And the game previews the trajectory and bounce before you throw. Grenades can one-hit kill half the enemies and also interrupt enemy Overwatch and knock back without cover, which means you can chain grenades together. Hit an enemy with 1 grenade to push them into the range of another grenade. 25% of my playtime was spent pixel hunting for the exact optimal grenade trajectory. This is bad. And this is one of the reasons that you don't want continuous space in a turn-based game. Like, people don't believe me about this for some reason. Like, people are skeptical that you should not mix continuous space and discrete time or vice versa. But this happens every single time. This kind of shit. It's basically like playing turn-based pool billiards with explosives. The newly finessed Overwatch mechanic. There's potentially a whole other game here. What if you incorporate verticality like grenades roll down slopes? Sure. Chaining is where Gears Tactics shines. The ultimate drug, a gun trigger combined with a slot machine, which is something we say is a good thing in the video game world, apparently. Yeah. Chimera Squad had stuff like that, or Chimera Squad. Is it Chimera or It's Chimera. Yeah, okay, got it. One time I won the mission before the enemy had a single turn. Jeez Louise. Executions, high DPS that doesn't give the enemy. They become downed and die in 2 turns. You can run up and execute them to earn a 1 bonus action for everyone else in the squad. This leads to chains where you can basically double your squad's allotment of actions. I don't love playing around with actions in games at all. Like across the board, any kind of game, any kind of strategy game, I should say. I think that actions should be pretty fixed and not change. It's one of those things that just you shouldn't probably be messing with. But I do like that in this game, it appears that this is one of the most like emergent complexity-ish kind of things because, you know, you can have units do sort of surprising things. Chimera is how you said it? Huh. Chaining action combos are fun though. Actions are the single most important currency in any turn-based game, and anything that messes with them are always the most powerful thing. Yes, that's one way of sort of like expressing my issue with it. I'm not saying that it's not fun to do it when it is in a game. I'm saying it shouldn't be in a game. The Vanguard tank class is useless because it can't earn bonus actions outside of executions nor makes effective use of its actions. This is still too specific for me to focus on. I get the idea though, and I you know, these games are so bereft of emergent complexity that having like this kind of system, I'm not saying take this out of this game because it's probably one of the most emergent things that makes the game less of just like a strike first puzzle. You know, because it's like it makes it harder to calculate. Basically, it actually does a similar thing to if anyone's played Arima. It's kind of like it's like chess-ish kind of game, but you have 2 actions per turn, and it's just amazing how much that like blows out the calculation space, having just 2 actions as opposed to 1 per turn. So, yeah. Design lessons. Be careful with recruitment mechanics. This game keeps pushing these authored hero protagonists in your face, letting your personalized characters just fade away from the spotlight. Let players choose the turn order, so it makes the Overwatch. Oh, we were just sort of dealing with this in my game. Overwatch and grenades work. Just reiterate the problem in Horizon's Gate. Per unit turn order forces the player to do a bunch of math to get the best turn order, which is even more and more annoying when you balance the game to discourage too much time manipulation. Yeah, like I said, I've always been a fan of you can move your whole... Pardon me. You can move your whole squad at once on a turn in any order that you like. I think that's the best way to allow for... Because what you really want is like combinatoric stuff between your units. Like think of all your units together as like one unit that just exist on different tiles and that they are going to do something together. And so you want there to be a possibility. The other thing is if there's this kind of like interleaved turns system, the other problem is that like there's enemy interactions. Enemies could be like popping into, you know, the info horizon and stuff like every single turn. And I feel like it might be too much of a rate of info, input randomness. Legend of Bumbo has a ton of action chaining stuff, and you can sometimes win entire combats in one turn if you do it right. Yeah, that stuff is a little weird. I liked how the Mage Knight Minis game did turn-over activations. I don't know about that. More actions is better as long as you support it. The decision to have every class start with 3 actions per turn was very savvy. I agree with that. That's cool. When I played one late game mission that limited my actions to 2 per turn, it was an interesting experiment, but obviously a much worse game. And as I criticized above, I think the Vanguard, Heavy, and Sniper classes are deeply flawed because they don't play with the action chaining systems nor interact with other classes. I think that having 3 actions per turn is good. I don't think you should expand on that. I don't think you should be getting all these extra actions all the time. Let players bet on what will happen. The Scout class has stash actions for the next turn, anticipation, or sacrifice health for bonus actions exertion. The Sport class can donate actions to an ally, or bet that an ally will go on a kill streak, teamwork. There's also more indirect ways of betting. I don't know about this betting thing. This seems bad. Especially because it has like random 2-hit stuff. Like you don't want to bring that out even more. Like you don't want to exacerbate. That's what this is. This is whatever affects, your random, combat system has. Let's exacerbate it. Let's make it even more. So now if you miss that shot that's 90%, you have a 90% chance to hit, and you bet on it, well, guess what? It's actually mattering even more now. So this is, I disagree with this. I mean, in the context of an RPG, sure, go nuts. Have fun. Do whatever. Like you have betting and gambling and like all kinds of gamification stuff, and maybe a mini game where you actually have to do a workout and using the Kinect or something. You can really just do whatever. And that's all good. But in terms of in a strategy game, I really think that any kind of like betting type mechanism. I just saw someone on Twitter say like there should be more called shots, and I disagree. I think that's a bad idea. Betting in a deterministic combat system, I just don't think it's necessary. Like, why? Basically, you're just adding an extra feedback loop on top of the thing. Like the system should already sort of like have betting in it. Like strategy games already are all about betting in some sense, in that like not betting exactly, but like betting is just like an arbitrary adding of another level of what strategy games already have in them. So for example, if I choose to do a certain tactic, that's because I'm sort of like guessing or betting or I'm thinking based on my model of the system that this would be a good tactic to use here. So if I can then, and this already has all the stuff about betting embedded in it, right? Like it already has stakes. So I could, if I am right, I have something I can gain from that. If I am wrong, I will lose something from guessing incorrectly about what's a good move, right? Making a bad decision. So betting is just doubling the effect sort of arbitrarily of certain things that players do in games already. So I don't think that's, I would think that the bet in a deterministic game would be, like, we could look at something like chess, and it would be like a bunch of turns out, right? So like you could make a bet in chess, like, hey, I bet that in 10 turns, I will have captured the other player's knight, right? Like their queen or something. You could make a bet like that. But the thing is, the game already has that in there, and now you're just, especially if it's actually like imagine if chess had a mechanism like, okay, yeah, you can do betting, and if you bet, that you can capture their queen in 10 turns, then if you were right about that, you gain like an extra bishop, and if you're wrong about that, you lose a bishop or something like that. You know what I mean? Like where it actually has in-game ramifications. Like you don't need that, because already capturing the enemy's queen is already is already incentivized and punished if you fail to do it. Betting is nice if it's something like the contract and contract bridge, since it unfolds your knowledge of the system, lets you get edges for having super deep understanding. Yeah, I think quality of life, Voltaire has a point about quality of life in terms of like being able to move all your party at once. There's something about it that's just aesthetic, I think, that like it just sort of feels more right to me and more like natural and less stressful. And there's some, I haven't quite picked out exactly what it is. Part of it is I like thinking of all my units as one unit, even if they're spread out on the map. I think it's good to think of like your units as one unit, and you're taking your turn, and it's just that like the parts of your unit, your avatar, are disconnected in physical space, but that is all just one unit. I really think that's a good way of thinking of tactics games. Chess 3, yeah. Maybe I should make Chess 3. That'd be cool. Do I have the rights to make Chess 3? I don't know. I should make Chess 3, and it should just be like nothing like chess at all. The things he's talking about are like, I'm going to bet, sacrifice one resources here on the hunch that it'll be more beneficial in the other place. Give up one unit's action because it's going to be better used somewhere else. Yeah, but that's already in every game, right? Like you're always giving up actions to get something else constantly. All right. That's my spiel about betting. Cover replaced directional facing. It basically combined movement and directional facing into one action. Very elegant. I don't like that cover has been made so explicit since XCOM 2012. Like previous games, XCOM 1995 has cover, but it's just not. It's just not so like. It's almost like in XCOM 2012, like when you have the cover buff, you have like a less percent chance to be hit. It feels more emergent and natural in XCOM 95, although I don't know what the code is. It could be that they have some kind of cover buff like that. But I don't like it being made so explicit, but it doesn't really matter. It's fine. The equivalent of the tactics backstab here is just flanking. If there was an even simpler way to get the field backstab mechanic without a cover system. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, League of Legends has a bunch of different ways to express backstab that are not necessarily based on like facing. Although I think that there's still a character, Shaco, who has a facing based rule, which is bizarre because it's like totally vestigial. I think there might be one or two other characters that have that kind of thing, but there's a lot of ways that you can get a backstab type of mechanism without like literally having facing. Oro Battler. Chess 2. Serlin made Chess 2. Everyone has the rights to make. What if I made Chess 2 2? XCOM 95 has the shots tracked physically in 3D space. I knew it. So you can cover by ducking. Right, yes. That's super cool. XCOM 95 is such a cool game. It's like such a achievement in so many ways. And it's unfortunate that more people haven't played it. What's it called? 2 chess, 2 2. There are a million sort of contextual crit mechanics you could use. Right, yeah. Let enemies be resources. This is a really good one. Yeah. The execution mechanic adopts a core tenet of bro-like design. Enemies are resources for player actions. No, that's true though. That is really true. I just hate the term bro-like. Enemies are resources for player actions, so sometimes you save an execution for later when it will chain with the rest of your squad abilities. Yeah, or in Oro, when monsters become monster tiles, when you knock them out of the level. But yeah, enemies, and we've been talking about this with like Legends of Runeterra recently, that like one of the ways that you can fix the whole actor removal problem is that when, your units, your creatures or whatever in a magic die, they don't just have to go to the discard. There's all kinds of things that could happen with them when they die. They could go to some other zone that then they can be redeployed from. They could rotate or something, or they could get some debuff, or something else. Like there's a million things that they could do other than just go to the discard, where they basically don't affect anything anymore. So yes, enemies being resources is huge. What this also, another way to phrase this is be skeptical of actor removal, because a lot of games, when you kill an enemy, they just disappear and they stop having any effect on the system other than your score or your kill tally or something like that. Avoid lazy ability design. I don't know if I love the term lazy exactly, but I think I know what he's getting at. The support class has an ability called High Powered Shot. It shoots with a 50% damage buff. And okay, this isn't really fundamentally different from the regular shoot ability. Well, why not? Gears Tactics is full of these, a bit better shoot. Right. I mean, so to get more in depth with that, it's like the problem with these is that they're spreadsheet values, right? They're just interacting with the integers that are inside of a unit. They're not interacting with the grid. That's really what it comes down to. When you want to make a different kind of thing, you have to really actually interact with the grid and the system. I want to reiterate that I like both these games, played both to completion. This criticism is not attack on anyone. Okay. Yeah. So I don't think the problem is laziness here, really. I mean, I guess you could say they're lazy, but you could have abilities that are lazy that um, laziness is bad, I guess, but like that's not sort of nailing the problem exactly. It's the biggest first step most designers could take to improve games by 1,000%. Yeah, the idea of units still doing something after death or whatever. Yeah, just being critical of actor removal, and I guess that's true in some of the bro games. I'm trying to think, like Imbroglio. Was that a thing in the bro games, the Michael Bro games, where enemies when they die they would do things still? I think one space knockback is lazy but more interesting than doing. Yeah, there you go. That's a good point. So the laziness is not exactly the issue. You could make lazy versions of these abilities that are definitely a lot more interesting. Thank you, Voltariel. Nailed it. Auto chess should be a racing game with chess pieces. You know, I think you're right. I think you're also the person to do that. That sounds like your brand, Bob. So yeah, let's see. It's not quite the enemies doing stuff when they die, but like in Imbroglio, it matters where you kill them. Right, yeah. Right. It should be chess, but the pieces are cars. It could be that. That's actually what I was thinking. I wonder how that would affect things. They just crash into each other. Oh, I was also looking at this. This is what's his name? Tom Chick's blog. But it didn't really seem to have a lot of stuff that oh wait, this is it. Tom Francis. Why did I say Tom? Oh, am I getting people confused? Hold on. Who was the person that people wanted me to It was Tom Francis. Okay. So it was this guy. I got him confused with someone else. But anyway, he's got some articles that we could go through. But I still feel like I'm like scared to read this because I feel like there's the problems are more fundamental. And a lot of the solutions that people prescribe for things like XCOM 2012 are like, sure, yeah, like I'm sure nothing in this article is wrong, and I'm sure that everything that he says is probably right. And you could make a game based on it, and it would be like a solid game. But it's more like just like, you know, rearranging sort of like deck chairs or whatever. Whereas like there's a fundamental problem. There's more fundamental problems. Yeah, like things like soldier health and stuff. I don't know. Problem is that people like video games too much. Tom Francis, he has YouTube videos. Okay, yeah, send me some Tom Francis videos, and we'll do some of those next time. What works and why? Oh, well, I'm looking at this right. No, this is a different one. But yeah, Invisible Ink did a lot of things well, and there was a lot about it that I appreciated. Yeah, we can definitely look into this. But there was also a lot of issues I had with Invisible Ink, but I don't remember what they were at this point. It's been a while. Let me take a quick break. I'll be back in like 2 or 3 minutes, and yeah, then we'll go through this article. Why not? Might as well. All right, be right back. All right. I'm back. Thanks for sticking around. People like video games too much is a pretty apt description of the problem in the game design space. Yeah. Okay. We're going to read this Tom Francis. Yeah, I think I confused him with Tom Chick. I don't know if anyone knows him, but he also used to write about game design years ago. I like his failure spectrum idea, but I have a feeling you won't like it. Oh, here's a video. What's this video? Oh, it's just like a guy talking to a camera. Who wants to see that? Cool, though. No, I'm definitely going to watch that. Yeah. In fact, we should add this to our document here. Good. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff out there. Heat signature. I haven't played heat signature. Maybe I should do that. When did that come out? Difficulty is random. Catches my eye. All right, let's read this. What works and why? Invisible Ink. What works and why is a thing. By the way, Invisible Ink is by James Lance, Frank Lance's son. And I'm technically working with him on making paper clips right now. 2017? Okay. What is it? A turn-based stealth game with randomly generated levels and no save games. You have 2 secret agents with different special abilities, and you choose from offices of varying difficulties and rewards. Yeah, that's something that I always object to. And you notice that in Gem Wizard's Tactics, there's 3 missions, but they don't have there's no like hard one or easy one. They're all the same difficulty, or at least they should be. To break into and steal money, equipment, and abilities, you break in by carefully peering around corners and doors, ambushing. It's the same problem of like choosing a difficulty level. And again, it's like, again, in a toy, in an RPG, it's totally fine. It doesn't matter. You break in by carefully peering around corners and doors, ambushing unwitting guards with your tasers, and hacking security devices from a special vision mode. If you want a better idea of how it plays, I recorded myself going through one mission, talked about my thinking about how the game works. I kind of want to watch just like a second or two of this just to remind myself, because I did play a good amount of this, because I appreciated a lot about it. But I remember it having like 1 or 2 just really awful flaws that it like boiled down to blankety blank, I forget what it was. It was something about like the security cameras or the hacking or something. I forget exactly, but it felt like a lot of games where it was like, yeah, it took like a couple of like really good steps in the right direction and then like didn't pursue it long enough. Like they didn't spend enough time on the design phase. Turn-based stealth. And as an XCOM, there are lots of interesting considerations to precisely where you should move your team member each turn, but instead of optimizing accuracy percentages, you're trying to avoid being seen at all, which is nice because this is it's less spreadsheet crap and it's more spatial. This makes it feel much more cleaner and satisfying than turn-based gunfights, but no less tense or eventful. Being seen is a rare crisis level event, but lots can happen between perfect stealth and caught at gunpoint. The edge of a guard's vision will cause you to be noticed, causing the guard to come closer on his next turn. Being seen by a camera will raise the alarm level and bring guards running, but not fail or damage you. Your taser only knocks guards out temporarily and needs time to recharge, leaving you vulnerable. These tensions and trade-offs are what you're worrying about on a moment-to-moment basis. I can see being able to, Voltaire says, I can see being able to choose varying difficulties being interesting if it's like judging how strong you are in terms of game resources at the moment, knowing how much risk you can afford. It's too big of a choice, really. Like those kinds of choices are constantly happening in a strategy or tactics game, and just baking them all into one big like, do you want like hard, like are you doing good or are you not doing good kind of thing. I think it's just too much of a choice. That's my problem that I have with it. It's too big. Your taser only knocks guards out temporarily. Oh yeah, we read that. It says something about the last horrifying gasp out loud moment I had in. It says something that the last horrifying gasp out loud moment I had in Invisible Ink was when one of my agents shot and killed someone. I'd set them in Overwatch to hopefully take out a drone, but a human guard walked in front of them. I was distraught at A, wasting my only shot on a guard who could have been tased, and B, raising the alarm level by tripping his heartbeat sensor. Not at the loss of life. Obs. That's a weird thing to say. Hard intel. I think every stealth game I like gives you an unrealistic intel advantage. Deus Ex makes your enemies short-sighted. Human Revolution lets you switch to third person to see round corners. I see round corners all the time. Wait. Oh, I see. Okay. Far Cry 4 lets you... Wait, what? Oh, he's talking about different... Okay, I was very confused for a second here. I thought these were the names of, like, abilities or something. Oh, lets you tag people to see them through walls. I decided to go all the way in Gunpoint. It lets you see everything at all times. This sounds like, I don't know, like Info Horizon would be a useful thing. Invisible Inks, subtle but extremely... Invisible Inks is subtle but extremely powerful. You can only see areas your agents and hacked cameras can see, but you can see if those areas are being watched. The vision of enemies, which even enemies you don't know about, shows up as if it were bright red light. That doesn't always tell you exactly where these unknown enemies are, but it gives you a perfect, reliable, hard and fast intel about the most crucial thing you could want to know. If I move there, will I be seen? Having that intel, being able to rely on it, makes Invisible Ink a game of strategy rather than one of guesswork and risk management. Nice little thing to tag on there. Gunpoint is such a fun game. Gunpoint. I haven't played that one either. I kind of wonder if you could make a good stealth game with the guards not being totally incompetent. I think I'll just say a couple of comments about stealth. I think that stealth is useful as like is promising and useful for puzzles and probably for toys. Toys can do anything, but I am skeptical of stealth as a mechanism for strategy games because it. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I feel like it's inherently a little bit like narrowing, in a way that's not helpful in my experience, based on just like basic assumptions about like what a system is going to be like. I'm not saying you couldn't make a stealth game, strategy game that was fantastic. I'm sure you can, but generally, if like you have units moving around, like a tactics sort of thing. I think stealth is I'm a little bit skeptical of it for strategy games, but I maybe can't say exactly why. Stealth is bad because it doesn't rely on actor removal, but it kind of does rely on actor removal because it's not violent enough. I don't think that's it. I have having more competent guards is just not enjoyable. Well, yeah, I mean, if the guards are competent, then they are like AI, and now I have to just like crack this stupid AI code and learn to exploit it, basically. I've actually played a stealth game like that, multiplayer with humans as guards, but I generally don't think it's a good idea. It's a bit all or nothing, yes, that is part of it. It's very binary, right? Like you're either seen or you're not. And I know that this game has like an in-betweeny kind of thing, but usually that in-betweeny has to be very small. Otherwise it doesn't make sense, Once they kind of notice you, they're either going to like find you quickly or just forget about you. And so what, if I recall correctly, what this game had was a lot of like sort of like hacking stuff that just kind of felt a little bit arbitrary and not Yeah, like these vision cones. I don't know. Bored of binary? Try trinary. Um, it could also be about disguises and stuff. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, yeah, maybe. I mean, disguises would be hard to express like sort of in a gridish kind of way. Like it feels like that's just a buff that makes you invisible. Um, that's the problem is that like visible is like a very binary interaction. But I might be wrong about this. I don't feel strongly about this. When you fail, all right, failure spectrum. This might actually talk about what we're talking about. When you can fail at something but still carry on playing, I call the range of states between perfect success and total failure a failure spectrum. There's a spectrum of possible outcomes, and screw-ups can move you toward the failure end, and recoveries can sometimes move you back up towards success. In Invisible Ink, there are a few different failure spectrums that you could break down into something like this. Equipment. Leave with all the money and equipment you in the level. Oh yeah, I remember this stuff. I really didn't like this stuff actually about this game. Leave with all the money, because you can just sort of like halfway through a mission, you can just kind of be like, all right, yeah, that's good enough, or you can like kind of keep going to get more stuff. Evasion. Get what you want without being noticed. Get noticed but not directly seen. Get seen but slip away before anyone's hurt. Someone gets knocked out but not injured. Someone gets injured but not the other. Yeah, this is all really good for like narrative story generation stuff. And XCOM had a lot of this kind of stuff, which is really cool. Get what you want without killing anyone. Right. I mean, this style stuff, I don't know. I mean, sure, it's fine. It's objectives, it's achievements, you know. It's like what do they call them in roguelikes? I always forget. Anyways, yeah, that's fine. How much you care about each of these things is subjective in some cases, but together they form a huge range of possible outcomes. Every encounter and decision you make as you play is moving you up or down that spectrum, so you care about them all. And you also kind of don't care about any of them in a similar way. Like, none of them really matter. A big failure spectrum is good because a lot of the most emotional moments in a game can happen on the cusp of failure. If you were this close, but what is failure in this world? How can you be on the cusp of failure, really, if there's no failure state? If you were this close to being seen, your escape is exhilarating. But if failure is a game over screen, spending a lot of that time on the cusp of failure means a lot of game over screen. See, this is exactly what I predicted this article would be. Not stepping back to ask the question, well, maybe you can lose the mission and keep going. XCOM 1995 had this. This is not revolutionary. It doesn't have to be that when you lose a mission, you get a game over screen. Let's see if maybe he talks about that. Each one interrupts your immersion and ends your investment in this current run. It pulls you out of the game. You find yourself in a menu, then a checkpoint or save game. Right, so it basically doesn't happen. You just reload it. Mentally acclimatizing to how much of your story has been lost forces you to disengage from it. And yeah, I agree. I mean, I think in terms of narrative generation, save scumming is not great for that. You know, if I were making like a narrative generation-y toy like XCOM, I would try to design it so that players were incentivized not to save scum, so that players would just like keep going and experience failures and experience loss and keep going. The presence of this game over screen is not being... Well, anyway, let's keep going. If failure isn't game over, it's still nail-biting when to come close to it. I don't know if I understand that sentence. And when you do slip over the threshold, it's just another development in the story you're creating and living through. The challenge switches to one about recovering from your screw-up, which can be tense and exciting in itself. Each level of a failure spectrum ultimately means the game can make you spend more of your time at that exhilarating cusp of failure without introducing frustrating interruptions. Yeah, I mean, we're on the same page that... so I think that what actually he's saying here, I mostly agree with. I like the idea. I mean, and again, XCOM has all this kind of stuff. I like that. I think that's good for this kind of like narrative generation toy kind of thing. And I also think that a game over screen has no place in a toy. Or honestly, like, I'm trying to think, like, is there any place where it makes sense to put a game over screen? Like any kind of system? I'm trying to think, like, because traditional video games like platformers or shooters or whatever, like I think that they're better and I think that developers have been figuring this out over time. Something like Kirby's Epic Yarn, or the new Super Mario Brothers, where you can't die. There's no like loss. I think we in the early days of the arcade game days, we sort of like added these like loss conditions where the game would just be over, partially to like so that people would put more quarters in the machine, and partially because of like just vestigial like, oh yeah, like you can like lose, I guess, like because like in I don't know, in baseball you can like lose, so in this you can lose. And I think that a lot of these systems like just should never have had this loss condition to begin with, or this game over state. And I kind of think that like and by the way, the crouch mode made the point at the end of the game, but there's different, I'm talking about specifically like you met some fail state and the game was shut off abruptly and you got a game over screen before the normal end of the game, right? So you have some like actual end of the story or the campaign or whatever it is, and the game over screen cuts that off. That's the thing that I think really just shouldn't exist. Like anywhere, I almost think. Like I'm trying to think of a kind of place where that should exist, and I just can't think of one. Every single kind of system I know of would be better without a game over screen. GTA game over screen. I mean, in GTA, don't they just respawn you at the hospital when you die, and doesn't it like keep going forward? It's not like a traditional game over screen. Yeah, you just respawn, but I think that it didn't even reset. It's not even like a reload. Campaign games shouldn't exist. At the end of the match, game over. Well, campaign games are always going to exist, and like story-based games and whatever. But those should not have... If I'm going through a story, there shouldn't be some arbitrary like, oh, game over now, and reload if you want to continue the story. No, let the story keep going, and just have it be like Kirby's Epic Yarn, where if you want some amount of like variance in the outcome, just have it be that there's like resources you can collect and whatever, and when you get hit you like lose some of those resources. But there's no need to have the game just arbitrarily shut off like a 1980s like quarter eater. Yeah, so get rid of game over. That's another take. That shouldn't be in any game ever. Each one interrupts your immersion and ends your investment in this current run. Pulls you out of the game and you find yourself in a menu, then in a checkpoint or save game, mentally acclimatizing. I already read that. If failure isn't game over, it's still nail-biting when you come close to it, and when you do slip over the threshold, it's another development in the story you're creating and living through. The challenge switches to one about recovering from your screw-up, which can be tense and exciting itself. Each level of a failure spectrum ultimately means the game can make you spend more of your time at that exhilarating cusp of failure without introducing frustrating interruptions. Yes. Well, we agree on that. That's for sure. Absolutely. So but I don't know if he's even saying that they shouldn't have that. I think that he's just saying on top of having that, you should also have this. Whereas I'm saying definitely do have this. We agree about that, but also remove game over completely. Systems interplay. This one's hard to define precisely because the best moments it creates are always unique to the situation. But basically, I mean, all these cool systems link into each other so that problems can be solved with another. So the problems in one can be solved with another. So this kind of sounds like we've been talking recently about things like, structure. When games have like high coupling. And really what this is structure. When all these systems link into each other, that's them being structural. And yeah, that's good. And I should also say that like Invisible Ink to me struck me always as like actually moving the conversation forward in terms of like what is a turn-based tactics game and how do they work. Whereas XCOM 2012, by comparison, felt like it was moving it way backwards from where we already were. It did not it did not advance the conversation. It was more like, how do we present this like lowest common denominator, really simple version of something that already exists to like a mass audience. My favorite example is when I was trying to ambush a guard with triple power armor. One layer of armor means you need a weapon with one level of piercing to harm them. Triple means you need 3. I have none. But power armor is a device, and devices can be hacked. I spent my 3 turns using my parasite program to break down each layer of his power armor, and 1 more getting Deckard in position to take him out. At last, he's in range, so I have him run out of cover, stand directly behind the guard, and nothing. The taser icon is disabled. I check the guard's info. 1 layer of armor. It must have regenerated. So this actually sounds like kind of spreadsheety a little bit, actually, but whatever. This is bad. I used all of Deckard's movements points to get him right up to the unsuspecting guards, and now he's stranded there. The guard is facing a wall. He will absolutely turn around on his turn. And Deckard's cloaking device is nowhere near being ready again. I have the hacking power to put another parasite on his armor, but it wouldn't eat through even 1 layer until the start of our next turn, by which point it would be too late. I don't have any other hacking tools, not even the basic lockpick that breaks 1 firewall. But hang on, didn't I see that for sale? We're on this mission to buy new hacking upgrades, and my other agent, International, reached the terminal last turn. She found nothing good we could afford. The lockpick isn't good, really, but right now it'd be a lifesaver, and we sold one of my less useful hacking programs. I think we can afford it, if we sold one of. International is miles from the terminal, but if she sprints full pelt, she could just make it to the console this term, alerting everyone on the way. She sprints, everyone hears the footsteps, but she makes it. Selling our hunter tool gets us enough for the lockpick. She buys it. I switch to hacking mode, use the lockpick and it shuts down. Now the taser works. He's down. That was the guard AI feeding into the item system. Right. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, like interconnectedness, like supporting mechanisms, high coupling, all good. That is good. And it's also, again, like shocking how little of this kind of stuff. See, like, I think the framing here is like, wow, look how much of this kind of stuff is in Invisible Ink. Isn't that crazy cool? And my feeling is more like, well, no, this is normal. This is like what you do when you make a game. And tactics game have like a mind-bogglingly low amount of that kind of stuff. Like they just don't have it. It's like a lot of them, it's a shoot first, like puzzle almost. The worst example being like Advance Wars, where there's nothing like this in Advance Wars at all. And it's like, like I said, I think this is a major step forward in this style of game. But, stepping back, it's not so much to this game's credit, and it's more to the discredit of other games like it that don't have this quality. On another level, I might have been able to have an International buy her cloaking unit, sneak up with the guard. Yeah, so like what this enables is creative play, allowing there to be a certain amount of space, possibility space, so that players can actually make decisions and that are creative, and there's emergent complexity, and things are sort of surprising but not in a random way, surprising yet inevitable. They're able to like make their own kinds of choices and build meaning into the system, and yeah, I think that strategy games can have a lot of that kind of value, and in a way they become their own sort of like story generation systems. It's by far the best tactics game. No, there was a couple of major problems I had with Invisible Ink overall. I mean, for me, I would probably, what is the best tactics game? My 2 favorite tactics games are probably XCOM 1995 and probably the original Fantasy General. Those are probably my favorite existing tactics games. Because this took some really strong steps forward, but it also, and I can't remember what they are, they're probably somewhere in the chat history. I'm going to go search for it after this. But Yeah, if you search Invisible Ink, you might be able to find in the chat history like what the issues were. I remember Viva Fringe and I were talking about it, and we all kind of agreed that the game just like sort of came down to blank, like so many games do. Yeah, I mean, well, overall tactics. I mean, I thought we were sort of like talking about squad tactics, like war games, and I think that for tactical war games, I think that that those two I gave are my favorites. But yeah, in terms of like just tactics games, I do think Oro is among my favorites, if not my favorite. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think what else because most of them just like I hate them. They're awful. All the Fire Emblems are just so terrible. I mean, they're fine as like JRPGs. I'm still playing the Switch one, and like playing it as a JRPG, it's fine, and it's like it looks like a tactics game sometimes, but really it's just you might as well just have the menu and be like doing like fight, like Final Fantasy style. It's not very tactical. And Advance Wars is more of like a puzzle, and XCOM 2012 and all the not this, but Gears Tactics. They all kind of have this like shoot first contest kind of thing. This is among the best though. I think that this is better than definitely Invisible Ink is better than XCOM 2012 or any of the big tactics games that came after that. I think. I should say I haven't played that much of XCOM 2, but like from what I did play, it didn't seem significantly different from XCOM 1 or 2012 1. By the way, XCOM 2, the original XCOM 2, don't play it. Just don't play it. I mean, you're not going to play XCOM 95, but XCOM 2, the sequel to XCOM 95, it's pretty bad. They did a bad job with that one. Okay. Or if the safe alarm demon had been active. Right. And all these, that's the other thing that's cool about, this is what I love about strategy games is like this feeling of like, okay, I won, I did a good job, or like I had this experience, whatever, but there's always like this thought in my mind, like there's so many other things I could have maybe done. And that's so important, that feeling of like opening your imagination, right? We talk about like console games on this show sometimes and how they just force you, like teach you to not have an imagination. To just be like, no, there's one thing you're supposed to do, find out what it is and do it, or just sit there and be bored. And you're like, oh, I wonder if I can, and it's like, no, you can't do anything. No. It like aggressively shuts down human creativity. And I think that strategy games should be the exact opposite of that. Xenonauts. I did not play Xenonauts. But and there's a bunch of these like indie XCOM XCOM likes. There's another series of them too that I'm forgetting about right now. Maybe it'll show up here. It's not. But and I don't know why, but I never really gave them a good shot. Yeah, not sure. I guess I'm sort of skeptical that for some reason I'm just skeptical. Like XCOM has so much, the 1995 game. It's like, it's incredible how much stuff it has, like emergent weird stuff, like the way that fire behaves and smoke behaves and the way that like smoke affects people and that like the way that vision works and like lighting effects work and the way that everything's destructible. Like I feel like I'm going to play one of these things and it's just going to be like, it's going to be like, I have no need for a clone of XCOM 95. Like I already have XCOM 95. Does this improve on that in any way? I feel like a lot of these were just made because like it was difficult to run XCOM 95 for a while. Banner Saga. I did play Banner Saga, but I don't remember what my issues were with it. But you know me, I found something wrong with that one too. I've even heard of someone intentionally knocking out their own agent just because guards don't notice prone bodies. That's neat. Uh, wait. It's in early access at the moment. Obviously, I like it already, but I would pretty much always advise waiting until the developer calls the game done. I'm only playing now because I need to judge it for the IGF. Um, well, all right. So the main takes here was this, I think. I mean, yeah, this is just this can be summarized as like this actually has game design in it, unlike most tactics games. Um, and this is good for these kinds of like emergent sort of like toy narrative toy things. Um, but game over screens really just shouldn't exist. But yeah, this is cool. We should do more of these. I'm glad we found these few blogs. We can go through some of them. We can go through some of the videos. If you guys want to look through some stuff and find things that you think might be interesting to go through together, that would be cool. Obviously, we're going to be playing games too. I guess I should focus more on playing tactics games then. Like I had Hades was one of the queued up games. If you can look here, Hades and stuff like that. Duke Nukem Forever. Why is this here? Somebody wrote this as a joke, I think. I'm not playing Duke Nukem Forever on my fucking stream. That is a great joke. Whoever wrote that. Yeah. So, let's see. So we did that today. Yeah, so tomorrow maybe we'll do some other tactics game. We mentioned a couple of ones in the chat here today. The ones by Tom Francis. So maybe we can play those. Somebody said that they liked Heat Signature. Maybe Heat Signature we can play tomorrow? Oh, that's already on here. Look at that. So maybe we should do that tomorrow. That'd be cool. All right, so it's been about 2 hours. I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming by. Tomorrow we'll do some Heat Signature. They're not tactical games. Oh, okay. What is Heat Signature? Let's look it up. It's kinda of tactics. Urtuk. Yeah, let's find a tactics game to play tomorrow. Has hexes. It's the thing you do is coming up with tactics. We could also play Invisible Ink. It's been a while since I've done that. I don't know if like it's possible that some of my issues that I had back in the day when it came out, which I think was like 2017 or something at this point. Well, no, always it was 2017 if that was the year. But it was a while ago now. Yeah, I guess I could play this. Looks like the grids are kind of small, but maybe I'm wrong about that. What's the deal with this game? Open world, tactical turn-based RPG in a low fantasy setting. I don't love all the survival stuff, but did not grab me at all. I played one mission. Yeah, I could see that. I forget exactly. Yeah, we could play this one. I don't know. People have this one has wounds instead of permadeath. Oh, cool. Well, what do you mean? Oh, you mean like after a mission? Like you don't lose your characters? Yeah, this would be cool. We should maybe check this one out. Good digital versions of tactical minis games. My opinion of tactical minis games is that they're usually, are they not good? I thought they were like not very good, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I thought that the tactical minis games, it was like kind of like it was all about the minis, right? Like it was all about like painting these minis and stuff. And then it's like, oh, now we actually have to like play a thing with them. So put them on a table, and you just have like a big open grid, and they all just like battle each other. But maybe I'm wrong about that. Skirmish games. I mean, yeah. If anyone knows any suggestions, I'm open to everything. What if I just search tactics here? What comes up here? Some of these are not tactics games. A lot of these are not tactics games. So, turn-based. What if I search turn-based tactics? Is that a thing? No. Well, sort of. Popular tags and find out tag. Oh, turn-based. Here we go. Bloop. And I guess we could say tactical. Turn-based tactics. There we go. Boom. All right, cool. Empire of Sin. This is the John Romero game, you know. This is turn-based, huh? Wow. Interesting. I still didn't play much of... Oh, I didn't play the new XCOM. I sort of feel like I don't want to, but I could definitely play the new XCOM that came out recently. Search box only does names. Okay, cool. Good to know. The hell is this? Goblin's best turn-based games. I mean, the cool thing, I like that there are a lot of people making games like this. Here's a Warhammer one, but it's probably not. It's probably like an MMO or something horrible. CCG. Anyway, yeah, we'll find some stuff. Chimera Squad. Yeah, we can check that out. I guess that'll be our default for tomorrow, unless somebody comes up with something better. I will play this because it looks cool, but let's stick with the with this genre. Alder's Blood. All right. Just looking at the screenshots. Where's the gameplay? I looked through all the screenshots. Is this it? It's all just like menus or something. Hold on. Maybe they just took bad screenshots. Let's see the video. Elder's Blood.
I have seen the unimaginable. Horror. God is slain. His corpse.
Come on, Elder's Blood. You know what I'm here for.
And humanity hovers
on
the brink of desolation.
So you just have like one unit at a time?
Then again, you and I are.
I have a feeling this is not like what we're looking for. But it might be cool. You could probably unearth the secrets of Elder's Blood in this game.
That stands between balance and chaos.
Oh, there's 3 units.
Yet we must use the shadows to slay what lurks within. Horror.
Elder's Blood. Uncover the secrets of Elder's Blood. Elder's Blood. Do you think they'll let me write the theme song for Elder's Blood?
Horror.
Says complex tactical combat. That is what we want. Crafting. Ugh. Crafting is the worst. Squad-based strategy. Okay. You know, that's another thing, that the missions, no one does like randomly generated missions. Like, I guess XCOM does. But even the geometry in XCOM, I think, is fixed. Or at least that's the sense that I get from playing, especially the new ones. Crafting equals deal breaker. Crafting is definitely not a plus. I mean, don't get me wrong. I want to know the secrets of Elder's Blood and everything. But yeah, why aren't these games more randomly generated? Why are they always like not like that? Invisible Ink does proc gen levels. Yes, that's true. I kind of want to play Invisible Ink again. Maybe I'll do both those. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. I remember oh, you know what? I wonder if I can find it. I think, let me see if I can find, I think I wrote to James Lance to tell him what I thought of Invisible Ink. But it was a while ago. Let's see if I can find it. 1 second. This will remind me of my issues with it. God. One second. I think I know I can find it. Shoot. I guess I didn't do what I thought I did. Well, I'll have to find it at some point. Maybe I emailed it. I know I did. I know I actually told him what I thought of it. But it might not be so easy to find it. Nah, I can't find it. Oh well. I definitely did have a thing though. We could search for it on the what's it called, on the Discord also. So we'll do that later. Anyway, thanks for coming by, everybody, and for hanging out. Guess you didn't like demon output randomness. I don't know what that is. You don't want to combine 2 wood planks, 1 stone to make a +1 damaged battle axe? Ugh. That hurt to read that. My guess you didn't like demon output randomness. I don't know what that means, but probably not. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, everybody. And I will be back on again tomorrow for some more tactics fun. Yay! Thanks for coming by, and yeah. See you on the Discord. Peace!